she's become the well that I go to
Mm.
when my soul is dehydrated, I guess.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
certainly whether we're thinking of climate catastrophe and of course this inauguration and all that it augurs, yeah, you have to go back to the well.
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. Today, we're doing something a little different on an extra special bonus episode of The Stacks. I'm joined by poet and author Saeed Jones, who's been a guest on the show before, and he's back today to talk to me about a lecture given by Toni Morrison in 2012 about goodness and the literary imagination. Today, we talk about goodness, evil, and what we hope to do and be in the face of so much devastation that is going on in California, the United States, and around the world. We're calling this episode a little bit of counter programming to put up against the inauguration. So wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this, thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. All right, it's time for my conversation with Saeed Jones. All right, everybody, welcome to The Stacks. It's Monday. It's a bonus episode that I am so excited to bring to you. I'm joined today by my friend of the podcast, poet, author, all around just like outstanding human, Saeed Jones. Saeed, welcome back to The Stacks.
Oh, my love, it's so good to be back. Hi.
I'm so happy to see you. Okay, so let me tell folks what we're doing today. A few months, maybe like in December, Saeed texted me bitching about some person who had done something because we do that. And Saeed was mad about some person. And we started texting back and forth, like off of this original wrongdoing. And we sort of like, we're just talking. And I was saying this and he was saying that. And then I was like, you should do this for me. And he's like, you don't ask me to do stuff enough for you. And I was like, well, what should I be asking for? And we go on. And eventually Saeed's like, we should have a conversation on Inauguration Day as a form of counter programming. And I was like, this is a great idea. Why didn't I think of this? Are we in a fight because I'm not as smart as you? And Saeed was like, there's this great essay that Toni Morrison, it was a lecture that she gave that's now an essay in a book about goodness and the literary imagination. And we should talk about that because that would be great counter programming. And I said, this is a brilliant idea. And then I said, see, shit talking actually is generative for people like us. So I want all of you to know that the shit talking and the hating, it can lead to really good ideas. And we're here today to talk about goodness and the literary in the literary landscape, but also in the world. We're recording this on January 14th. I am in LA, as many of you know. It is days after the start of both the Palisades and Eaton fires here. I am living in a world that feels both terrible and also somewhat good based on what I've seen. And so I think we're going to talk about all of these things and provide a space for all of us to think about goodness in the face of whatever's happening in Washington, D.C. today. At the inauguration. So that is sort of our plan. We're staying loose. We've got notes, but we also just sort of want to talk and gab as friends about all of these things.
Absolutely.
Is that good?
Dare I say, talk ourselves through it, because
yes, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, this is, one, I'm here in Bennington, Vermont, teaching creative writing at the Bennington Writing Seminars. And I brought several books up here with me, one of which is, this collection of essays and the lecture around Morrison and goodness and the literary imagination. And I said to my friend Eula this morning, I was like, I think Morrison is my pastor at this point. I collect all of her books, all of the books she edited. Now I'm into like collecting, essays, anthologies, letters. I'm collecting books by people who were friends with her, because she's just become, and I have many of these, but she's become the well that I go to when my soul is dehydrated, I guess. And certainly whether we're thinking of climate catastrophe And of course, this inauguration and all that it augurs, yeah, you have to go back to the well. And yeah, so you're right. Frankly would be reading this book today anyway. But of course, I'm glad to talk about it with you.
Yeah. So for folks who are at home and like, well, I want to read this book, I just want to tell you what the book we're referring to is. And there is a online, I think the New York Times published the actual essay of Goodness and the Literary Imagination, which I will link to in the show notes. But the book is called Toni Morrison, Goodness and the Literary Imagination, with essays on Morrison's moral and religious vision. And it's edited by David Carrasco, Stephanie Paulsell, and Mara Willard, and it's from Virginia University Press. So for folks who are looking to read the full book, it starts with an introduction. It has this essay that we're going to discuss, and then it has multiple essays from different academics about Goodness and Toni Morrison's work. And then it ends with an interview between David Carrasco and Toni Morrison about Goodness. So that's sort of a rundown of the book. We're not doing the whole book. We're just kind
We're
of
not
talking
doing the
about
whole
the
book.
goodness part. Yeah, we're not doing the whole book, people. But if you want to do the whole book, it is available for you to do. Okay. I just want to start in like the most basic place. What is your relationship currently to good and evil?
My relationship to, well, I'll say my relationship to good is something that I've really been trying to deepen.
Mm,
Um, I think good, as I'm really trying to tap into it, is often quiet. That's something
mhm,
that she kind of acknowledges. Like, does good brag about itself? Does it announce itself? I think it is quiet, um, often intimate. Um, it's either a private decision or like a small circle. You know, it's an act from person to person that may not be communicated between those two people, right? Or like a small group of people taking care of each other. I am increasingly interested in the good that is known, that has an integrity. It's not vague, but it's not broadcast. And because I think social media and technology have really kind of hijacked a
yeah.
lot of our values. But and I guess the other thing I would just say is um, in the last few years in particular, and just reaching this point in my life, I'm 39 now. A lot of terms that I used to find cheap or saccharine, I'm really reestablishing an appreciation for, like good, like
Mhm.
hope, like love. You know, I think I kind of used to roll my eyes, and
Yeah.
now I'm one interrogating why I felt that way, what happened, uh,
Yeah.
and faith. You know, that's another word, devotion. Why did I have such a ugh response? And then now I'm trying to establish a relationship. And then evil is I just think it is far more common. I think it's just
Hmm.
everywhere. I just it's just evil is everywhere. It wears many faces, and it is quite adept, ironically, in wrapping itself in language that I think many of us, especially those of us who think of ourselves as smart people, are easily seduced by.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think like saying seduced by is so right because I love a performance. I love a
Hmm.
show.
Hmm.
And I think that evil, to your point, is that. Like
Hmm.
I love reading books about bad people, people
Hmm.
who do horrible things. Like to me, that is my bread and butter as far as like my literary imagination, right? And
Hmm.
I too roll my eyes. The word that really just makes me want to like crawl under something is nice.
Oof.
Nice
Okay.
is
Yeah.
the one. I can get down with good. I love hope. I
Yes.
am at sometimes an optimist, though I am extremely pessimistic as well. But nice is the one that it's going to take a lot of therapy to get to a place where I feel good about the word nice. But I think that's also because there's so many connotations of nice that really are like nice nasty, and
Yes.
that whole
Often
performance.
nice actually isn't good, or
Yeah,
polite actually isn't good when you get
I think
down
that's
to it.
right.
So I
I
feel
think
that.
that's right. But I mean, in this essay, Toni Morrison talks about how goodness is treated in literature and how it's changed over time and how
Yes.
before World War One, a lot of books were concerned with this not necessarily a happy ending, but like a good ending where
Right.
goodness prevails.
Yes.
And that after World War One, when there was sort of a collective realization that good, even if quote unquote good wins, right? The Allies win, so much evil was done on all sides that became the thing that was interesting to unpack. And I found that really fascinating for two reasons. One, because I really don't like a lot of books that are pre World War One. I realized like
Same.
that's just not stuff that I like to read. But two, because it made me think about this moment in our current society. And I'm just like wondering if we will have events that will shift us back to an interest in goodness and away from evil. Like or do these literary trends change? And I don't know.
Yeah, I think I remember as a student of literature, even in high school, but certainly in college when you start doing the survey courses where you're really beginning to get a sense of trends and artistic movements. Modern literature, which begins with World War One, I mean, because it just, the word that I always think of is shatter. I mean, it absolutely shattered people's worldview.
Yeah.
And there really was no going back from that. And then it's really striking because, of course, you have artists who were coming into their artistic practice. World War One happens, and then they were only like many of them were only middle aged when World War Two comes along.
Right.
So yeah, so to me, it's both this sense of what does a hero even look like in this
Mm-hmm.
new shattered not even landscape but world, and I think that's a huge part of it. It was like the whole world, this
Yeah.
now that we're talking about, like, climate catastrophe is a global sense. It's not about a country or a community. That feels significant, the scale. And then that it happens again with World War Two. And yeah, I as I was thinking about that, I was like, oh, yeah, those were the books. I remember my posture as a student changed. Because it felt, and 9/11 happened when I was a sophomore in high school. So that felt analogous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, though, I'm like, what would be, we can't pinpoint. And I actually think it would be really simplistic to say, oh, it's the 2016 election. Actually don't feel like
I don't
the
think
election
so.
was the turning point. I felt like it was act two of something, but I don't know I don't
Mm,
know if it's 9/11. I don't know if it was the war on terror. I don't know if it was the war in Iraq. It's instead like, instead of this being able to point to this one event that changed everything, it's like an era of constant shatter. Like, instead of like the big glass panes, everything's like little bitty shards
yeah.
in comparison. And where does
Yeah.
good live in that worldview?
Right. And I think like for us, 9/11 becomes this like huge global event because of the way that America looms
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
in the world, not
Hmm.
necessarily because it was felt directly like World War One or World War Two by so many
Right.
places. It was more
Yeah.
like in the shadow of America having this event, everyone else
Hmm.
must suffer and change because like
Yes.
we say so because this happened to us and so you will all if we are going to suffer so are you. And I think that's really different than sort of how World War One and World War Two were felt by so many people across the world, and also different than how global warming is felt
Right.
across the world. Like
Yeah.
that like we sort of inserted our pain onto others and said like, well, if
Hmm.
we're going to have this, like you're all going to check the water at the airport.
Yeah. And maybe, okay, this is actually helpful because, I grew up in Texas. So, George W. Bush was my governor
Right.
before he was my president. Then he becomes president, and then 9/11 happens. And yeah, you're right, because the isolation, and it's like, American isolationism and also American exceptionalism have everything to do with this perception of good in the war on terror. So it's right. We've been attacked, but we are the good guys. Like I do
Yeah.
feel, and this is a very millennial reading, I have to say, but it's true for both of us. Like that was a cultural moment where it was like we are the good guys, which is why, for example, the Dixie Chicks at the time, or the Chicks speaking out against the war on terror, was like violently pushed back on, because it was like, how
Yeah.
dare you? Because I think the response to 9/11 was, what is the image of good? It's like the TV show 24, where you have the guy torturing people. It is the
Right.
cow. It's like America was like, we're going to be one big cowboy and we're going to shoot him up. Our
Mm.
backstory is 9/11. This we didn't ask for it. We didn't deserve it. That's the rhetoric. How dare you? And now you're right. You're all going to suffer. And that became the American conception of good for at least a decade, just
Yeah.
wreaking havoc. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like what's interesting to me about this book, because before, when you suggested this, I sort of didn't realize that it was going to be about, or this essay was going to be about goodness and the literary imagination. I thought it was going to
Right.
be about goodness more broadly in the world.
Hmm.
And I don't know if for you, if you feel this way, but like I think of goodness and evil differently on the page versus how I think about it in life. Like I
Mm.
think about goodness and evil on the page as like representative of other things as well. Whereas in
Hmm.
life, I think that I understand the complexities more of like, you can be both good and evil. You can behave
Hmm.
in both good and evil ways. And that someone who is good in one moment could be evil in another, or could be
Hmm.
seen as evil um, to some groups and not to others, in a way that, like, in a book, in a story, it's often simplified to make it more
Mm.
clear to the audience who is who and what is what. Like I'm thinking about, like you're saying, 24, like this is the good guy,
Hmm.
quote unquote. And these other people are the bad people. These
Hmm.
brown terrorists are the
Right.
bad guys. And that to me feels like very literary, in the sense of like, this is good versus evil. Whereas in real life, I mean, some of us understand that like he's a bad guy too, that like
Right.
everybody's a bad guy. And I don't know if you think about these things differently.
Yeah, I mean, one, I have a line in the lecture that I want to point to that feels relevant. But one, the last thing you said is, I do feel like a very post 9/11, really up until just a few years ago, posture that I felt dominated contemporary literature and a lot of film and entertainment elsewhere, was everybody's a bad guy. Like that
Mm,
became that really
yes.
that became like a mature outlook on the world, was, and it was like weird that was the I was like, that's the
Right.
conclusion.
Right. And like
Everybody's a
that it's like
bad
sort
guy.
of defeatist, right? It's like, well, no point in
Uh-huh.
trying to be good because everybody's
Hmm.
bad. Or
Right.
like there's no use in leaning into like wanting to be better because it's
Right.
it's there's no point.
It
Everyone's
makes
bad.
me,
The end.
yeah, it makes me think, and again, it's very, very different tone, but it's very much a part of this, oh, dare I say it, milieu. But Avenue Q, everybody's
Oh
a little
yeah.
bit racist,
Oh
because the
yeah.
thing is, the posture from both of that, everyone's a little bit racist, or everyone fucks up sometime, or everyone's bad. It's not, and thus we really have to work to reach for goodness. Though we
Right.
really have to work to be anti-racist. The posture was, well, everyone's kind of like this, so chill out. Don't be so
Yeah.
indignant about it.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I would say, a point that is very helpful to your distinction between how evil kind of manifests in our daily lives and then how it tends to show up in art, is, this is from page 16. She says, grief, melancholy, missed chances for personal happiness often seem to be contemporary literature's concept of evil. And that
Mm,
feels true to me. We see, um, and I will say, quite frankly, let's take Alice Munro. She was evil, I feel, knowing
hmm
what we know now. But also, so much of her work, the themes, for example, were about these, like regret. you know
mm,
Regret takes up much more intellectual, artistic real estate in the conception of her canon than goodness than
Right.
satisfaction. And yeah, like, and then when I was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's true. It's in everyday life, we don't really, I mean, usually have villains in our personal life, maybe politically, right?
I
But,
have some
but,
personal villains.
right, right,
Let
right.
me
And
be
I,
honest. I don't want to be a
I,
liar, okay?
I
I
guess
might
the
not
rest of
be
us are.
good,
I
but
guess
I'm
the
going to
rest of
tell
are
the
not
truth.
so lucky, But generally speaking, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. It's these themes, these dark feelings that tend to get more real estate,
Yeah.
and I will say, to push back a little bit, grief, melancholy, and even with evil, something else we see in a lot of films with all of these reboots is like reconsideration of villains. I'm thinking of
Mm-hmm.
Wicked. I'm thinking of
Wicked.
Cruella. It wasn't like there was a new
The
Lion King that
Joker or
the
something?
Joker. I'm thinking the Lion King movie where like Scar is recentered. I think the impulse has been, if we focus on evil and make evil the main character, Ursula, we can understand evil better, and interrogate it in ourselves. I think that's the logic, but I don't think that really pans out. I think we kind of
Mm,
end up with everyone's a little bit evil, or we become evil eventually, which is kind of like the Batman thing. Like you're either
right.
live long enough and you become a villain anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think sustains goodness in the face of the popularity of evil? Like, if everyone's a little bit bad and evil
Mhm.
and like we're all going to be bad guys one day, what what is the not the point of goodness, but like how does goodness stay? Goodness is still going toe to toe with evil every day. Like we're seeing it. How? Why?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll go back to Morrison here, and this is at the conclusion. What sustains goodness is us talking about it, us
Mm,
depicting it, and
mhm.
communicating. And again, this is and part of this is like artistic, because you know. I think if you do a good deed, I'm not telling you to like go brag to your neighbor about it.
Right.
Go post on social media that you donated to a wildfire relief fund. No, just do it. Just do it and show other people the resources. You know what I mean? It's not about you. But in terms of as artists, she talks about how she feels it's really important. What did she say? On page 18, I have become more and more invested in making sure acts of goodness, however casual or deliberate or misapplied, and then we can talk about the Amish community that she mentions,
Hmm.
blessed, produce language. She's like, when goodness happens in our art, she says, like for novels, I wanted to impact the plot so that it's not just like a one-off, that it's centered. And then later she says, allowing goodness its own speech, right? Like letting goodness talk in the way that we always let evil kind of old monologue.
Yeah.
Allowing goodness its own speech does not annihilate evil, but it does allow me to signify my own understanding of goodness, the acquisition of self knowledge, which in the end is, I think, where Morrison lands in terms of like what's the function of a novel within a system of power. This is what I was just teaching a course this past semester on like how the memoir functions within systems of power. I think for her, the function of the novel is to show how a character
Mm,
learned something that they did not understand at the beginning, and that learning is a movement toward good. And it may not be a happy ending. She points to the
mhm,
bluest eye as an
mhm,
example. It's tragic for Piccola, but Claudia, the book's narrator, learned something vital, and that there's still
mhm,
value in that. So yeah, I think it's, as an artist, as a teacher, it's writing about goodness, understanding that goodness is as interesting as grief or brutality, and then trying to find ways to describe or even bestow language upon those acts of goodness in the work so that the reader has something to take away.
yeah. And I also think goodness, and I'm thinking about life right now, right? I obviously
Hmm.
cannot think about goodness without thinking about what's going on
Of
here in
course.
LA with the fires. And I'm thinking of goodness as like something that is generative,
Hmm.
right? That the reason that goodness is sustains, lasts, continues, is sought after is because there is something generative about it in a
Mm-hmm.
way that evil just can never be. Evil
Mm-hmm.
can grow, evil can excite, it can incite, it can do, it can move, it can be, infectious, but
Mm-hmm.
it does not create new, it does not create newness, it does not bring new life, new ideas, it does not inspire in the same ways, and it is almost always responsive. I feel
Mm.
like evil only exists because of goodness, and I guess maybe goodness only exists because of evil, but there's something that like goodness is progress, almost like it moves the
Mm-hmm.
story forward. In the interview, I believe at the end, she talks about slavery
Mm.
and what Black people were able to create out of having been enslaved and all of that evilness, how the music and the ways they interpreted faith and the sounds and the art and the communities that sustained each other, and all of that goodness that created something, that generated something. And I do think that that's also so important to your point of like making new language, finding new ways
Mm-hmm.
for characters to learn that goodness, when you feel it, it is so much more overwhelming
Yes.
than evil. Even if even when you feel evil, there's something like goodness is bigger than, right? Like in those
Yes.
moments.
That is it. I'm so glad you pointed to, and obviously Morrison thought so much about the legacy of enslavement, because I think sometimes I see people with the wrong takeaway. I mean, I was telling with a friend the other day in 2015, 2016, I did a book event. I interviewed Colson Whitehead about the Underground Railroad at the
Mm,
Boston Book Festival. And Tracy, literally the first question at the Q&A, after we've
oh
been
God,
talking
I'm
about
so
this for
nervous.
45 minutes, the first question came from an older white man. And he said, yeah, but weren't there some good things about slavery? And I
Hmm.
just remember the whole room just like turned on that man, because it's the wrong takeaway.
Right.
The point is not to go, see, there's a silver lining to even something as awful as 400 years of enslavement. The point is, look at goodness's strength.
Yeah.
Though we try to act like goodness is weak, frail, naive, childlike, it is actually the most mature, the most
Hmm.
wise, and the most enduring. And even a system and a history as violent and pervasive as slavery is not as strong as goodness. That's
Yeah.
the lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break and we're going to talk about the three sort of pillars of goodness that Morrison brings to us. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/the stacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the stacks. Okay, we're back from our break. And I want to just talk about how in that essay, she sort of lays out these three pillars of goodness for her that she's exploring. She also says, like, I don't know anything about goodness. Like, I'm trying to figure this out for
And she's
myself.
like, and the only thing more confusing to her, and I love it because I was like, if Morrison's confused, then I'm much more
Mm-hmm.
comfortable because I'm confused all the time. She was like, altruism. She was like, what does
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Because do you have a negative connotation to altruism in your mind? Because
Yeah,
I
I
sort
don't
of
love it.
do.
I don't love it.
But I don't know why I feel that way. I feel like it's used as an insult.
I think because okay, so I don't. So you and I both have a response to nice
Yeah.
because how the word nice usually functions in our culture is euphemistic for like docile. I think even obedient
Mm-hmm.
and deference to power structures. Altruism, I think, is I find difficult because it doesn't it's not even a virtue. It's like something above a virtue in that I'm like, I don't even know if it's literally possible for a human being to be altruistic. And I don't mean that in a cynical way. It just says it's like godly. It's
Yeah.
not a it doesn't strike me as an especially human characteristic because it's somewhere
Mm,
like five notches above good. Like in is it home? Like the women who take care of Cece, like that character like they're taking care of her and they're helping this woman heal who has been really disrespectful about them for most of her life, but they're doing it because, as Morrison points out, they don't want to die and God asks them, what have you done? You know what I mean?
right.
They want to have something to show for themselves.
Right.
And I just think what, and hopefully they don't go around bragging like we did this good deed.
Right.
They know they're doing it for a spiritual reason. And I think that is great and very noble. It is not altruistic, however,
Mm,
I
yeah.
I feel like if good were defined as altruism, we would all give up. It was just,
Sure. Sure.
yeah.
Okay, so here's what she says. Here are her three arguments,
Mhm.
sort of that are different
Her three
interpretations of
pillars.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, her three pillars. So one is altruism is not an instinctive act of selflessness, but a taught and learned one. That's number one. Number two is altruism might actually be narcissism, ego enhancement, even a mental disorder made manifest in a desperate desire to think well of oneself to erase or diminish self-loathing. And then, so number three, she's talking about some scholarship around DNA, and it says, seeking evidence of an embedded gene automatically firing to enable the sacrifice of oneself for the benefit of others, a kind of brother or sister to Darwin's survival of the fittest. And here she uses examples of like an animal that might sacrifice themselves so that the other animals in the colony can survive or get away or whatever that looks like. So that's sort of how the third one manifests. Is this something that is inherent in us? You either have a good gene or you do not, or that we all have a good gene that sort of triggers goodness when needed, or
Yeah.
altruism when needed.
I also
Um,
like that earlier on and I think this is true, with often with names, but she does some like word work with altruism, because she sees in it alter, like alter the other, like as in to do
mhm,
good does involves like someone else, but also you hear alter, there's a holiness in it. And then also, of course, altruism, I can't hear altruism without hearing true, that there's some sense of
mm,
authenticity, truthfulness to it as well, has always struck me. But yeah, it's a difficult word and a difficult concept when you really think about it.
yeah, I mean, she starts this whole lecture with this a schoolhouse shooting in Amish country, where a man goes to an Amish schoolhouse, tells all the adults and the boys to leave, leaving the young girls, and he shoots them, he murders them. And after this event, he's also killed, the shooter. After this event, the Amish community, they embrace his widow and their family. they raise money for them, and they also circle the wagons and say, we're not going to do interviews. We're not going to talk about
Right.
this. We are going to care for our own and for the family of the quote unquote, evil person in this situation.
Hmm.
And that sort of sparks Toni Morrison's interest,
Hmm.
or that's how she sets up her interest in goodness and evil in this book. And I'm wondering what you make of that story, because I gotta be honest, I don't know that I feel like what they did is any more good, like by not, I don't know. I don't know that it's inherently good to not talk about it, or to like not let this
Hmm.
be a thing. I
Hmm.
think I don't know. I struggled sort of with her framing of this, because she talks about like, you know, these people didn't judge the Amish killer. And I just don't know that I think that judging someone is necessarily evil. Like, I don't know that I follow her logic on some of this. Obviously, like, I do think it's very nice and good that the people took care of the widow of the shooter, because I don't necessarily think it's her fault or the family's
Right.
fault, right? Like, I'm not suggesting that, but I do think of sort of reading this response as good. I don't know. Maybe that like the goodness is not harm free in some ways, like that it doesn't come
Mm.
at a cost to the Amish people. And I'm thinking also of like after the shooting at the AME church in Charleston,
Right.
when the Black people who were victims and the family of the victims came out and said like, we forgive him and we embrace,
And
and
indeed
all of this.
testified. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm like,
Ooh.
well, okay, that is goodness, but to me it doesn't come without that doesn't mean that it is free of harm for other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know what
I
to make of any of that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said this. It is a true moral dilemma, which I feel like is why she uses it to open it.
Yes.
Um, it's incredible. Like, Morrison doesn't get enough credit as a philosopher, but this is what you and I
Mm.
are talking about. And
Mhm.
I was always
Mhm.
so intimidated by philosophy classes because I just felt like it was like white men talking about white men. And so I love that we're getting this from Morrison. One, in terms of where I can go with her, is it sets up this phrase she uses when describing it, which is the shock of forgiveness,
Yes.
which
Mhm.
is incredible. And I think certainly if you have ever, I mean, certainly not on the scale of this murderous person,
Right.
but if you've ever messed up and had a moment where someone just like immediately warmly forgives you, it can be shocking. And I just
Sure.
hadn't seen that established in language, which is again like she's translating good into language. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what she means when you're like, I don't even know if I deserve to be forgiven. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or forgiven yet. So that was valuable. That said, okay, so many thoughts. One, it's significant to me that this killer killed girls
Yes.
intentionally, had I guess the adult women as well, but certainly the adult men, and notably the boys
The
leave
boys.
the space. He killed girls. This was an act of femicide, a specific misogynist hate crime. I don't know a lot about Amish culture.
And this shooter was not Amish. So he was
Okay.
from outside of the community.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know a lot about Amish culture one way or another. I have to be honest. So I'm not going to make assumptions about their gender politics. But I will say more broadly, we live in a world that takes disrespect and violence against women, femmes, queer people less seriously.
Mhm.
So I will say that
Yeah.
because it does feel significant. I don't know if a group of boys had been killed, it'd have been the same reaction. But I'm going to
Yeah.
say, as a reader in 2020, well, now five, I can't ignore that. But secondly, I guess I would say, and certainly as someone who has worked in media for a long time and has come to a very complicated feeling about how media covers, for example, acts of violence, we don't know about the conversations they had within their community. All
Yeah.
we know is that they said, we're not talking to y'all.
Hmm.
We're going to take care of this widow, and that's it. That's all y'all are
Yeah.
going to get for us. So for all we know, I mean, I would like to, I hope. I mean, because there are mothers and fathers who lost their daughters, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
who lost their children. So I would very much hope that what they were saying is the way we are going to handle this tragedy. And then also, it's a tragedy that was brought upon us by that's the other thing, maybe the point three, it's so complicated, is this
Yeah.
tragedy was brought upon us by an outsider. So why would we litigate it with outsiders? We don't
Right.
trust any of y'all.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but
Right.
it's a really, I mean, I absolutely understand why and of course it also makes me think of, and I don't know if you've gotten to this in your Morrison series yet, for the stacks, but it makes me think of the plot of Paradise,
We
in
haven't.
which, yeah, in which women and girls who are in a religious space are all murdered. So,
Mm.
and it's interesting because I don't think Paradise comes up in this lecture, but she would have written it
It
already.
does. No, it does.
Oh,
It
it
has
does. Okay.
the
Okay.
pastor or something. There's a lot of
Right.
pastoring.
Right.
Oh,
So it's
maybe
a
it's
little
not an essay.
striking
Maybe
that
it's in
she,
the interview. Maybe it's in the interview.
yeah,
It's in
but
the
it's not,
book.
yeah, it's not centered in the lecture as much as maybe you
No.
and I would prefer. And I think that is
Yeah.
a reasonable pushback. Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of your point about gendered ideas around goodness, one of the things that in the interview, it's on page 234 that is said is that she's talking about writing about the male characters in Song of Solomon, and she's talking about like some of their nicknames and how like her dad had a friend and they all called him Jim the Devil, and not
Right.
just Jim but like Jim the Devil, full
Jim the
name,
Devil.
all one word, Jim the Devil. And how that there was maybe like a warning by naming him that for others, like to know, like that's Jim the Devil, like that guy
Keep your
might fuck
distance.
you
Be
over, right?
careful. Yeah.
And then he says, Carrasco, when he's talking to her, he says, this is these names are a kind of socialization, a way of teaching and knowing the villains in one's slave history and its aftermath. Like who made Jim into the devil, and by calling him that, it took some of the danger out of him and put some humor in his name. And she said, men are very good to each other. Women are good to both women and men. The men will take a bullet for each other, but not for a woman like me. And I found that really interesting. She goes on to talk about the ways that soldiers and soldier narratives are all about the men on the battlefield who loved each other
Solidarity.
so much and would take a bullet for each other, and how they have nightmares over the loss of their beloved soldier friends, and that it's like this intimate male on male relationship. Obviously now women can serve in the military, but I think she's really
Right.
talking about sort of the canonical texts and stories of
Well, okay,
men.
we're talking about inauguration, but also, listen, Pete Hegseth is today going through a confirmation to run the military, and he believes women should be taken out of the military. So
Sick.
it's striking that even in 2025, yeah, we're in flux. That there is a desire to, among many, certainly not all. It would be devastating for the military. Like, are you crazy? Like, the military recruitment is struggling as is. So, even as someone who is against the military state, I just think, practically speaking, they need all the recruits they can get. But it is striking that there is a desire to a fully homosocial, that's what it's called, though they get
Mm-hmm.
really uncomfortable with it, a fully homosocial vision of the military. Yeah, I mean, and it also feels connected more broadly what you're saying, like men being good to men, women being good to everyone. I'd say this is also like and I always wanted Morrison to go further in terms of her understanding of queerness,
Yes. Yes.
because I think queer people, um, there's that sense of community and goodness as well. It's not everybody.
Mm-mm.
As I tell people, I'm
Sure.
like, there are queer people and there are gay people. Peter Thiel is gay. He is not enacting a queer politic.
Right.
But that being said, yeah, and even for example, evil is lonely.
Mm.
Good, I don't feel is usually lonely because even in like, let's say literature, like you have a good character who is on their own, they are not lonely because they're like, I'm aligned with my faith.
Right.
I'm aligned with my morals, with my ancestors, with the person I'm sacrificing myself for. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, poor me. They're like, no, I don't need you. I would rather be good than have this facile crowd around me. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that's significant.
How well, as we wrap this up,
Hmm.
I want to read this one thing she talks about
Hmm.
evil because it feels this is also in the interview. It feels so spot on for what will the images we'll probably see today
Hmm.
on inauguration day. This is like the first page of the interview, and she says, I always thought the Nazis gained followers because of their uniforms. And he says, uniforms? She says, yes, the high boots, those pants. During the period in Germany, many people were very poor. It was a lower middle class country, and people were wearing the clothes from World War I. But the Nazis had this design, and those uniforms were fabulous. People are still playing off the fashion of those caps and those high, shiny leather boots. The people felt they had to respect, almost worship the Nazis because of that. That's the nature of evil. It's theatrical, and people admire theatrical violence and try to get on the best side, the winning side, in part because it has a handsome costume, it has panache.
Hmm.
And that to me, both times that I read this interview, stuck out in thinking about it in relationship to the incoming administration and the
Absolutely.
aesthetic.
And significantly, aesthetic and um, television understanding of the screen, right?
Yeah,
Because as I mentioned, Pete headset, and it blows my mind. But he comes from Fox News. He was a Fox. He was like a C-list
right.
Fox
I didn't
News
even know
host.
his name.
He,
I was
he
like,
was he.
who?
He was not from the A team, but nonetheless, he understands the screen, and that's obviously something for Trump himself and many people in that world. And so, even if they are not stylish or cool, and I would group Elon Musk. It's not that it's like um panache, but it is an understanding of, I guess we would say, showmanship that we're
Mm-hmm,
seeing now. And that makes
mm-hmm.
sense. Like if we're, like, yeah, and I like that she contextualizes, like, think about how threadbare the average German would be after World War One.
Yeah,
And then the sartorial style functioned in a different way. We're not in that era anymore. So it's
yeah.
not about sartorial style. It is about the screen.
Mm-hmm.
It is about the optics of the screen, whether it's your phone, your TV, and hate to see it. You know what I mean? But but
Yeah.
but we
But I
have to
also, oh,
acknowledge that it has power. We do.
I think that the aesthetic, the like MAGA aesthetic
Mm,
is about sartorial choices. They're just
mm,
different ones. It's not
mm.
about showing that we have our shit together and we're tidy and we're tight and we're organized and we have new clothes and shiny black boots,
Okay.
because that is not the country to which they're
Okay.
talking to. But
What do you think it is?
I think it's about showing like we're everyday people like you. We dress
Mm,
schlumpy. Our clothes don't fit. We wear a trucker
mm,
hat. Like we are just everyday, regular, degular. You can be part of this and we can
mm.
change the world with just this hat, right? I mean, I saw the movie The Apprentice, which I really liked. And in
Oh, I've been
it,
wanting to see that.
it's so good. Sebastian Stan is so good. But in it, there's a scene where Trump gets a suit with Roy Cohn, and it's really expensive and it's a really nice suit and it fits him so well. And Roy Cohn is like, you look so good. And as I was watching it, I turned to my husband and I said, how come his suits don't fit him good now?
Mm,
Right? Like he used to dress better, but the
mhm.
schlumpy suits and the loose fitting and the tie and the too long tie, it's a choice. And it is a choice that was made after learning the right way to dress, like the way
Yeah.
that rich people dress. So I think there's a performance of class Like Elon Musk could be put together. He's got
Right.
enough money to have
Right.
9,000 stylists, each making $1 million a day. And
Mm.
yet he doesn't, right? And so I do think
That's
there's
really
something
interesting.
about trying to use your clothes. I'm not saying this person is MAGA, but it's similar to what like Taylor Swift does. She doesn't have a stylist. She's the everyday
Relatable.
girl and she dresses weird. Like it's not put together. It's not tight. It's
That's
not clean.
Ooh, wow, Tracy. I know we're wrapping up, but I'm going to be
Yes.
thinking about this for some time now because I really hadn't understood it. But to your point, if it is an intention, it's kind of savvy
Yeah.
because there are a lot of traps that I think people who are like liberals, leftists, progressive, or whatever, just people who are against MAGA folks, there are a lot of traps. And making fun of the way people dress because they're
Mm-hmm.
not as dressed up or sleek is a
Mm-hmm.
class trap. That's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting.
Well, just
Wow.
think about the ways they always criticize Nancy Pelosi
Mm,
or Kamala Harris is her suit is so expensive. Her outfit was
mm,
so expensive when they are put together in a certain way. I do think there's something about the clothes and the
wow.
performance of the
Hmm.
clothes that is similar to what Toni Morrison's talking about with the Nazis, but it is specific for our time and our place.
Hmm.
And this like quote unquote economic anxiety, which is a way to talk about racism and classism and all these other things, but that's sort of the catchphrase. If you dress like you're economically anxious, right?
Hmm.
Like then you too
And
are part
to
of this.
and the I've really come around on economic anxiety because people are anxious, they are worried, and
Yeah.
so to mock economic anxiety or to mock the way they're dressed, a lot of people are like, well, I am struggling to pay my bills, and that person's dressed just like me, so
Yeah.
what's going on here, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, wow, that's what I mean it's evil is not to be and I think and I love that she says like just to give goodness language does not annihilate evil, she says.
Mm-mm.
And I think I always talk about, especially like after the election, like on my podcast with Sam Sanders and Zach Stafford Vibe Check, I was like, we have to do risk assessment. It is
Mm-hmm.
really important that people understand when they are in danger and how, what to look for. And like what you just said about like I'm like, whoa, that is really helpful information. Because, that's the balance. And that's why good and evil live in balance. It is really important to think deeply and vulnerably about both. The
Yeah.
problem, as Morrison notes, is that at least in literature, we just spend so much time developing and investing in the character development, as I'm here, doing workshops, the character development of evil as a theme or as characters or an antagonist rather than good. And so
Mm.
that's the misbalance. But whew, you really have to do both. You really have to do both.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up. I want to ask you. This is like a big question, and
Uh
who
oh.
knows? We'll both try
Saeed,
to
are
answer
you
it.
a good person?
No, no, no. This isn't therapy. I said it was a big question. It's not
Okay.
therapy. The question is, I guess, how are you thinking about goodness as we enter this new administration, as we look at these wildfires, as we think about climate change, as we think about Gaza, as we think about,
Mhm.
you know, all of the harms being done? What about goodness are you thinking about or working toward, or how are you approaching it? And I know that's a
Yeah,
really big one and that's a hard one, but I do want to leave people with just some ways that they could be thinking about goodness in their own
yeah.
life and how they can be doing good
Mhm.
deeds or being good people
Absolutely. I love
as we
that. No,
enter.
I have been thinking about this a lot, actually. Listen, I am a teacher. I have a large following and platform. It doesn't do me any service to be naive about that,
Mm-hmm.
frankly. And so To a certain extent, I am always kind of communicating resources. I realize that I have a platform and I can use it. Or as I come, that's why I'm like, let me go talk to Tracy because you and I can have a conversation about goodness and it can reach a lot of people. Right. So I'm always, I don't know. I think that's important. Like if you have that gift, I'm not going to step away from it. Tony K. Bambera wrote once on a back of a postcard, do not leave the arena to the fools. So I'm not
Mm,
going to leave the arena to the fools. That being said, how am I thinking about goodness now, outside of my kind of public persona, my public self, is my goodness is offline. I don't think this will always be the case, but I feel that evil has won for now the battle of online
mm,
spaces. And so that's why
mm-hmm,
I say, like, even as like social media influencer, I'm not leaving these arenas to the fools because I have this platform and I don't think my absence is gonna make things better, at least right now. Um, but in my personal life, yeah, I think I want to do more good offline in part to protect the good. I
mm-hmm,
want to have quiet, secret underground networks and
mm-hmm,
communication that cannot be co opted and studied or surveilled by
mm,
evil actors that are clearly doing that. And
yeah,
when I say that, I'm talking about people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Donald Trump. I think we need to be wary of showing our work in public
mm,
because they're a part of the public too, and we see that they are obsessed with them. We live in their head rent free, as we should.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just, I want to ask you kind of a follow up in your work as a writer.
Hmm.
Does this essay, does thinking about goodness as we move forward in time, does that change how you are thinking about how you're telling stories on the page? Are you more invested in goodness? And it may be also as a teacher, like encouraging your students to lean into goodness in their work, to not be so seduced by the evil.
Oh, I'm always oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with because
Mm,
I just think I can teach you craft, and the craft of writing and developing arguments and bringing stories to life. But I'm always trying to talk about the morals
mm,
and politics. And as I tell my students, let's use our powers for good is what I say to
mm-hmm,
all of them.
mm-hmm,
And yeah, I think for me, this conversation and Morrison's lecture and essay, it's just kind of reified some work I've already been doing, particularly with the memoir I'm working on, which is about me as much as it's about some of my literary ancestors, like Langston Hughes. He was a good guy. And it's already a theme I'm been writing for months and
mm-hmm,
months. But yeah, it's like investing page space, word count in trying to understand the integrity of his goodness because he was up against so much, including family members who were just like really mean and frankly anti-black, like
mm,
self-hating. And he really resisted it in a very quiet,
mm-hmm,
joyful, persistent way. And so making sense of
mm.
how he did that, how he protected his good, yeah, that's something I'm into.
I have been thinking about goodness,
Yeah.
obviously this week especially, and feeling torn between being a public person who lives in LA, who has a platform, who wants to be an example of like what we can and should be doing, and also getting
Mhm.
resources out, and also feeling torn about like not wanting to make myself to anyone the face of
Right.
this fire, of this tragedy, because I my family was so lucky, we didn't lose our home, we're all safe. I just live here, and not super close to either of the places, right? Like 20-minute drive in either direction, but also wanting to feel like the work that I'm doing is helping in some way, and feeling desperate to like do something good for some other people who are needing it more than I am, and struggling between wanting to show people like, this is what you can do, this
Right.
is what I'm doing, this is like,
Yeah.
here's an example, because so often I think people want to help, they want to do right, but they don't know
Mhm.
what to do. And
Yeah.
even when you tell them like, this is what we need money, people still feel like, well, like, can I send, or like, can I, so really trying to like show people, but also like you're saying, wanting to keep a lot of this private. I shared publicly that someone who works with me on my team, she lost her home. Another woman that I work with also lost her home. And I've shared that information publicly because those are my people. And I want to make sure that people are taking care of them. And I've sort of adopted them as like, these are the GoFundMes that I'm really behind. Like, this is because these are my people, but also doing a ton of stuff offline with them and for them that I do not plan to share publicly at all. And that includes some things that the Stacks Pack, which is our Patreon community, has done for one of these women, because she is a member of the Stacks Pack, that I never posted about, I never talk about. And I think trying to find the balance of, and I think this is for everybody, even if you don't feel that you have a big platform on the internet, you do probably have a large community in your life that you're connected to many people. And it might not feel large to you, but it probably is. And you're probably very important to a lot of people, would be my guess. As like finding a way to be both public and private with your goodness, finding ways, like you're saying, to share resources, but also to be sort of underground networking, doing things. And I think that's hard sometimes, because sometimes it's really easy just to publicly be like, click here, do this, and to feel like you've done enough. But in this last week, I've really realized that it is not enough to share resources unless that is all you can do. Right? Like some people, maybe you're not able to go outside in LA because the air quality is not safe for you, and you don't have funds to donate, or whatever that looks like. And what you can do is that, and that's what you should do. But I think if you can do more, whatever the situation is, whether it's, protesting some of these anti-trans bills and legislation, whether it's,
taking
supporting
up the
people in
slack for
Gaza.
people who are
Yes.
like overwhelmed
Yes,
right
exactly. Like we have to be good. We have to do what we can when we can, because you never know if one day you're going to be a person who needs the support. And so my approach is like to act in good faith, in the hopes that it's not altruistic, in the hopes that I earn enough credit that if I need it, people will cash me out, right? Like that people
Well,
will support me because I've done the work, and some sort of like fake karma, which, I
well,
don't know. That's what
it's
motivates me.
it's a striking image out of these wildfires that I've actually been thinking about. Is it feels like a perfect metaphor. The wind can change direction in an
That's
instant.
right. That's
Someone
right.
else's strategy can become your peril, like that, and that feels
Yeah.
significant. But also, I think, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I don't think goodness usually feels good in the moment. I think
Mm-mm.
it feels like a reckoning. I really liked like all of the nuances you're thinking through. I'm suspicious, and this is like we keep going back to nice. Nice feels like an easy pat on the back.
That's right.
Goodness, good is like it's work. It's a reckoning. It's thoughtful. It's being thoughtful, and you're on to the next good act. And I think yeah, and I just think that is worthy. And I don't think there's going to be an applause round. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think
Yeah.
it's just going to be like, we made it to the next sunset. And that
Yeah.
that is good.
And I just want to say this one more thing. I also think, to your point, goodness also feels inadequate. I think. I think
Mm,
if you ever feel like you've done it and you are getting
yeah,
that pat on the back, there's probably still work to do, right? And
absolutely.
like, I can again speak just from this week, so many people messaging me and being like, thank you so much for everything you're doing. You're doing so great. You must be so tired. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But like, there's so much we need to be doing. And like that
Mm,
feeling of like, it's not enough. It's never going to be enough. There's nothing that I could do alone that would fix any of this. And that goodness not only almost feels inadequate, but also that it is something that happens in community,
yes.
right?
Because
Like you can't,
none of us can do it all alone.
you cannot
Yeah.
do it alone. You can
Yeah.
only be good in community. And I think that's to the point of like the Amish people that start the essay. Like they made a choice as a community. They circled the wagons together. They said, we are going to do this. This is who we are going to be. What they did in private, we'll never know. But what we do know is they said together, this is who we are. And I think knowing that goodness relies on community is hopeful, and it is healing, because we know that if we stick with each other, as the saying goes, we're all we got. And I think that feels sort of nice in some ways. It feels a little sad in some ways.
We made it to nice. Well, yeah, I mean, because that is it's funny. It's like humble, joyful inadequacy. That is, to me, perhaps why goodness is generative, because we
it's
know.
Seeking.
Yeah, I think of Rachel Katsi Ganza. She said at one point in some piece of writing, "Out of the work comes the work." And that's kind of right. And I think about that all the time, all the time. And I think that is it. Like, out of the good comes the good. Like understanding that something that people, there are a lot of immigration activists, or like you're right, LGBTQ plus IA activists in California right now, who are literally, all of their energy is having to go into piecing together their home, finding shelter tonight.
Yeah.
So no, they can't be calling their Congress people or doing other things that, so that it's helpful. Out of the work comes the work. And it is, as long as I'm not satisfied with my goodness, I'm still alive, because it means I have more good to do. It's not a defeatist inadequacy. It is actually an optimistic inadequacy. And so I love that you brought that together. Oh, Tracy,
this was great.
I adore
Thank you.
I really
adore
do.
you. Everyone at home, we hope so much that this is helpful, or was at least a little bit of an escape or a break from whatever you're feeling and going through today, wherever you are. And I think, we should continue thinking and talking about these things publicly, privately, and in any ways. And Saeed, I love you so much. And thank you so much for talking shit to me so we could do this. Out of the evil comes the goodness.
What did Nikki Giovanni say? I'm so hip, even my errors are correct. Look at us.
Everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that does it for us today. Thank you so much for listening, and a huge heartfelt thank you to Saeed Jones for being my guest on this extra special bonus episode. Don't forget, the Stacks Book Club pick for January is The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley, and we will be joined by Jay Wortham on Wednesday, January 29th to discuss the novel. If you love this podcast, if you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack. And check out my Substack at tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod at Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. Today's episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Megan Caballero. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tagirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.